Sorry. Just jealousy. I was trying to scupper it for you.
Hi everybody, to those of you joining us on the town hall organised by the Newcastle United Supporters Trust, we are just admitting people into the meeting and we will be with you very shortly. Hello again. Just to confirm, this is not a sponsored silence. This is the Newcastle United Supporters Trust Town Hall. We're just waiting for people to be admitted into the meeting and then we'll get going. Thanks ever so much for being with us and thanks for your patience. We have more people joining us all the time. This is just to repeat that we're just waiting for people to join the meeting. We've all been waiting for 17 weeks, so I think we can wait for a couple of minutes more. Sorry, too soon? Sorry. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. Thanks for your patience. Just to say one more time, sorry for the delay. We're just waiting for people to join the meeting. We'll be going in a minute or so, though. Thanks for your patience. All right. Hello and welcome to tonight's town hall organised by the Newcastle United Supporters Trust. My name is George Culkin. I'm a writer for The Athletic and I'm your host tonight. This is the second town hall that has been held by and for Newcastle fans over the last few months. The first was organised by Shi Onwurah, the MP for Newcastle Central, and we'd like to thank Shi and her team for their huge assistance in setting up tonight's meeting. She can't be with us tonight and apologises for that, but wants us to know that when Parliament restarts, she'll be presenting a written petition calling for transparency and accountability from the Premier League. And that, of course, is partially the reason we're here tonight. That first town hall was about the takeover of Newcastle and the issues surrounding it. Parts of that meeting were very painful and very uncomfortable, but it was also, I believe, very important. What shone through that night was the respect, intelligence, and passion of Newcastle fans, a willingness to listen and engage. What also shone through was the enormous desire for meaningful change at St James's Park. I don't think many of us who were present for that meeting thought we'd be here now. The takeover, or the lack of it, is the backdrop for this evening. People want answers. They want to know why it hasn't happened. They want communication. They want to understand. And there's a bigger story too, which this taps into. Why are fans always the last people to know, to be heard or spoken to? Whether it's VAR inside a stadium, matches being moved to accommodate TV, the big decisions in football, the very people who own our clubs. Why don't we have a say? Why are we never told? Why is it okay to treat us with contempt? And when did we become so powerless? I'd like to paint a picture. For obvious reasons, this is a difficult image, But let's put ourselves inside St James's Park for a moment. It's St James's Park on match day. There's a decision you don't like, a bad tackle or a misplaced pass, and you rise to your feet and you shout. How many people hear your individual voice? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 50? And I know this is romantic, but let's think about those days and nights when St James's is full of rage or full of love. How does it feel when 50,000 people are on their feet, celebrating or condemning the same thing? Is there anywhere better? Is there anywhere more elemental? When your voice is amplified, when your voice is part of 50,000 voices, it's heard in the dugout, it's heard in the director's box, it's heard on Northumberland Street, and because of the way the Premier League is televised and reported, your voice is heard around the world. That is the raw beauty of a club, and that is the point of a supporters' trust. You don't have to agree about everything, and how could you? But when you agree about one thing or two things or three, and you all speak together, your voice will be heard. When your voice is amplified by 10,000 others, by 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, the louder your voice becomes. And I know that people say this is football and this is Newcastle, we can't change anything. And we all know that argument because if we're being honest, we've all felt it. It's not about us anymore, it's about the television money. And that's also true, except for one thing. Where does that television money come from? It's from your wallet and it's from mine. Now, in the last week or so, we've seen the power of the fan base coming together. We've seen a petition calling for greater transparency from the Premier League climb above 93,000 signatures. We've seen the Trust write to every North East MP and encourage fans to do the same. Over 6,500 letters have been emailed. 28 MPs have responded positively. This is your voice amplified. I've also got another example, and the following is a message from Amanda Staveley, which she has asked to be read out tonight. And she says, I would like to thank the Newcastle United Supporters Trust and all Newcastle fans for their incredible backing and huge efforts over the past few days and beyond. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Speaking on behalf of myself and my husband, the Reuben family, and the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, we are not just overwhelmed by your support, we are humbled by it. Our group has received emails and messages in the thousands, and I can't begin to tell you what that means to us. We do not take it for granted. We understand that a strong supporters' trust means a strong Newcastle, and we understand and have seen again just how powerful and beautiful a united Newcastle can truly be. Thank you again, Amanda. To repeat, this is your voice amplified. Okay, thank you very much. That's enough from me. So I want to explain the format a little bit, and it's going to be as follows. I'll introduce a few speakers who will talk about the trust, and then we'll have an open floor discussion. Now, to make a point or to ask a question, please use the Zoom comment function, and I promise you, we'll do our very best to get to you. Please have patience with us. Everybody here has a day job and everybody else is a volunteer. So we're going to try and do this on a first come, first served basis. And so we'll start now with a few words from Alex Hurst, the chair of the Newcastle United Supporters Trust. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, George, and tremendously well said. Thanks again to you for hosting this, and thanks again to Chionura and her staff who've allowed us to use this platform to speak to you all. And it's something that me and the other board members of the trust have wanted to do for a long time, to be able to engage with people in such a significant manner. And thank you to everybody for spending your Friday night. It's much nicer outside than it is indoors in much of the UK, and yet here we all are together talking about Newcastle United. It's been quite the week, to put it mildly. Since the bad news to many supporters last Thursday, I think I've seen the fans of Newcastle United come together in the way in my 20 odd years supporting the club that I've never seen before. And we were presented with a challenge last Thursday as a fan base. We're going to either accept it and move on and not seek answers and just get back to the mundane of supporting the club. Or we could fight, or we could try and unite for once to get answers from people who owe us answers. And at the Supporters Trust, our message has been clear, and we aren't demanding anything of anyone in terms of approving deals or going into details about football or corruption or that kind of stuff. What we want is some transparency. I don't think that's a lot to ask. And many of you on the call now had a hell of a time in the past 17 weeks. People worried about all sorts beyond football, about getting the money back from Newcastle United and about the future of the football club, which means so much to us. And what I've seen in the last week is an organisation and a bond between supporters that I don't think I've seen in a long, long time. Personally, as a trust,
Guten Tag!
We've gained more than 4,000 new members, which is massive.
Guten Tag!
And we've got over 7,000 people emailing their local MPs.
Hello, mate. What's this about? I can't understand how to turn it off.
Just going to stop talking for a sec because we've got some interference there.
Hello, Matthew.
There we're gone. Silence. Get in. wouldn't be a Newcastle United event without there being a major hitch. So we'll crack on where I left off. Yeah, so 7,000 people have got in touch with MPs across the United Kingdom. And what I'm proud about that is that this is organisation, and this takes effort. To all of you people watching who got involved and got in touch with an MP, you've done something. It's not about sitting here complaining. We're often, in the media, we're often belittled. We're often belittled as demanding, hysterical. I could go into worse characterizations of Newcastle United fans. And what I've seen in the last week is fans organise, fans get busy, fans think, hang on, we're the people most impacted by this decision. Most of us live in the region, which is impacted by this decision, and we're going to demand answers. And for 20 out of 29 so far North East MPs to come and support the Supporters Trust in our effort for Premier League transparency, that means a hell of a lot. And everyone who's helped make that happen, you're a credit to Newcastle United and you're a credit to the North East. And the feedback that we've had from MPs, and we're hoping to hear from some of those MPs on this call, is that yes, this matters and it transcends football. This isn't just about football, this is about the region in the North East. It's not just about Newcastle United. It's not even just about the city of Newcastle. 2 million people live in this region, and for us to come together to try and get the answers from an organisation in the Premier League who basically, according to one person quite high up in government I spoke to on this, called them a law unto themselves. And for MPs, not just in the North East, but in Oxford, in Cumbria, in the South East, in London, to write to the Premier League and write to government saying none of these fans deserve answers, those things would not have happened without you and without other support coming together to try and achieve something. As you all know, and most of you will know as Supporters Trust members, I spoke to Amanda Staveley at the weekend, and the statement she's just read out there from George echoes the kind of thing that she said to me. What I took away from that conversation was, one, her willingness and eagerness to support and talk to you, not me, to you, the members of the Supporters Trust. It wasn't a private conversation. It was a conversation about me. It was a message for you. And the fact that we had someone, regardless on your opinion of the takeover, and I'd imagine because our members are so pro-takeover, that you're all very pleased to hear from her. She was passionate about the city of Newcastle upon Tyne, the football club, but also about you, about us. It's been so long, and I speak to Newcastle United occasionally, the people who are in the club at the minute, and to hear someone talk about us, not as a hindrance, not as someone that affects the team's performance or unhappy or a problem, like the national media often describes us, but as the reason they were buying the club or trying to buy the club, that filled me with a lot of hope. And hope isn't something that we've had a lot of over the past 13 years. So I'll leave it there and hand you back to George. I just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you to everybody who was part of the Supporters Trust. Together we're stronger. Together we are making our voices heard. And I think we're just getting started. So keep up the great work, everybody. thanks from me.
Thank you very much, Alex. And next, before I go to the next speaker, it's just to repeat that once our speakers have done, if you would like to ask a question or just make a point yourself, please use the chat function on Zoom. Yes, I'm just making sure I got that right. Please use the chat function on Zoom. Next up, I'd like to ask Greg Tomlinson, also from the Trust, to say a few words, please. Greg.
Thank you very much, George. And thank you everybody for joining us today. So I'm also one of the board members of the Trust, and actually delighted today as well to announce a new initiative that we've been working on and that we're really pleased to launch today. So as things have progressed over the last few weeks, our membership has gone up and a further 3,000 or 4,000 members, and we're looking at around 14,000 members now. And as has been explained, the Newcastle United Supporters Trust exists to provide a way for fans to get their voice heard. It's run by an elected board and operates in an open and transparent manner, as you all know, but we exist fundamentally for the members, and everything we do is for the benefit of our members. And as that increases, the board recognises the need for further direct member involvement in the running of the Trust, to ensure we represent our members in the best way that we can, and to ensure that we as an organisation make the best use of the diverse skills and knowledge amongst our members. So we're delighted today to launch what is going to be called the NUST Council. It's open to all members and it will interact directly with the board to assist in setting the priorities and directions of the Trust, as well as getting involved in the day-to-day running of our campaigns and initiatives. It will meet at least once a month, initially via video conference given these current times, but hopefully one day we can sit in a room together. Board members will also attend. We'll form subgroups and task groups will be formed that we can work on specific projects once they're agreed, reporting back through the board. It's a great way to have a direct influence on the running of the Trust, and all the information will be made available on our website shortly after this meeting. But it's really important that we get all of your help and assistance to build an even greater voice and a more influential Trust. The application form will be on the website. Applications due in by the end of August, end of Friday, the 21st of August, so 2 weeks today. But this is a really great opportunity to really strengthen what we can do for our members. So we're really looking forward to having some more of you on board and helping us really drive the Trust forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. So just as I can see that some questions are coming in on the chat thing, they're coming down on my screen. Just to make the point again, we would love you to speak. We would love to hear from you. It will be an open discussion. So if you have points that you would like to make using your own human mouth, that would be wonderful. And so what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and get a list together, and then I can call on you at the right time. So I can't sort of respond to questions that are coming down on the chat function. What we want to do is have a chat to you in person. So please don't be shy. This is the point of tonight's exercise. Next up, we have Mary Glinden MP. Do we have Mary on the line, please? Perhaps we do not.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Thank
Just
you.
getting unmuted there. Hello, everyone. Thank you, George. And I definitely agree you have to get people to ask questions in person, because trying to watch that chat line when you're chairing a meeting with such, I think there's 200 and near 300 people on now, wouldn't be the easiest thing to do. I'm Mary Glinden. I'm the MP for North Tyneside. I'm a season ticket holder at Newcastle, together with my husband. And I'm also, I think, a member of the Trust, but mind, I haven't paid any fees for a few years, so somebody might come after me after this meeting. Can I just say well done to the Trust for the fantastic organisation that's already been referred to. As of about 4:30 this evening, since the 2nd of August, I've had 519 emails. Unprecedented, really, for any campaign in the last 10 years I've been an MP, from supporters and perhaps one or two There's just members of the public in North Tyneside who are disillusioned, frustrated, and looking for those direct answers from the Premier League. And I think it's a disgrace to think that the Premier League is made up of the clubs in the Premier League, and that Newcastle should be treated so abysmally is a disgrace. And I was glad to hear on the news before on my computer that the Prime Minister has added his voice to say that the Premier League should now be making a statement. I hope that's not just a little bit of it's not just him dipping his toe in the water, but he will come and be more of a support, because I think, as the comments were made, if the Premier League can't take notice of the person who's running the country, who will they take heed of? Hopefully, the thousands and thousands of fans and supporters of Newcastle United, and the earnest desire they all have to see our club succeed and to see that success reflected in the region, whether it be through regeneration, whether it's through how people feel, and help people through this hard time. I think there's been times when I've been at Newcastle United and I've just looked around, I'm going to get a bit emotional here, and just watched people and thought it's the hard-earned cash to spend to come here to see a good game of football, and just to look at people and as George said before, you know, that united voice. It's the most amazing feeling to see people either all up together or all down together, but united. And this, sadly, it's a shame that the trust getting so much prominence because of what's happening at the moment, because you do a fantastic job and you have done for a number of years now. But can I say that whoever of my colleagues are on here, and I think we're here to listen. We've already shown our support in your request to contact Mr. Masters and to seek answers and more transparency about what's been happening, and then to see how we can all move forward and what else we can do. And I look forward to hearing from supporters and trust members this evening, and hope we have a very good meeting. And thanks to everyone who's made it possible.
Thank you, Mary. That's fabulous. Thank you very much. Right, I would now like to call upon Ian Pearson from United with Pride to say a few words, please. Are you there, Ian? Do we have Ian Pearson ready to speak to us? Not as yet. I'm going to hang about for a minute or two until we have Ian. Ian Pearson, are you there? Maybe, shall I move on to the next speaker? Okay, I'm going to go to Steve Wraith of Newcastle Legends. If Steve is there, you there, Steve?
Yes, good evening, George, and good evening, everybody who is watching. Thanks for the opportunity once again to speak. Wow, what a 17-week period we've had. What have we learned in that time? We've learned that Mike Ashley finally wants to sell Newcastle United, which I think is news that was, welcomed by every Newcastle United fan around the world. We only found out last week via Lee Charnley, but at least we know he wants to sell now, which I think's an extreme positive from this horrendous situation that we found ourselves in over lockdown. What else have we learned? We've learned that some journalists have used the opportunity to use our anxiety through this 17-week period as clickbait by misleading Newcastle United fans. George obviously accepted. Which has been annoying for Newcastle fans, and it's been a situation which has been manipulated, of course, by circumstance. But I feel that some of the journalists will, and should hang their heads in shame. What else have we learned? We've learned that Amanda Staveley is a woman of her word. In 2017, when I met Amanda at Newcastle United, and got a chance to speak to her and her husband at that Liverpool game and tell her about the football club that we all know and love. She fell in love with the club. She told me that she was going to come back and try and buy Newcastle United. Well, here we are in 2020 and she hasn't given up. I think that says a lot about Amanda Staveley, and those words that have been read out by George so eloquently at the start tell you a lot about Amanda, PCP, and her consortium of the Rubens, and of course the majority shareholder, should the deal go through, PIF. This is a genuine bid. This is a real bid, and this isn't anybody who's a tire kicker. Mike Ashley's also accepted that with the brief statement that we had last week from Lee Charnley that never say never about the deal, and essentially that this is the deal that he wants to go through. So again, that's another positive for Newcastle United fans to take in. What else have we learned? We've learned that should this deal go through, this isn't just about football. This is about investment in the area. This is about investment in Newcastle and the surrounding areas. This is a deal which could transform our city for the better. And that's the reason I think now we're seeing this become not a football debate, which is what we all enjoy down the pub with our friends, family and mates, but it's also now a political debate, something which a lot of us probably didn't want it to be, but it's now at the highest level. It's now reached Downing Street. And with this petition now sitting at round about 94,000 or just short of, that extra push tonight should see it to 100,000. And that is going to make one big difference. It's going to give us the opportunity then for the Prime Minister, who's already been acknowledging this via his constituents, that this needs looking at, this needs investigating. And from our perspective, that can only be a good thing. Because the 2020 hide-and-seek champion, Richard Masters, for me, is culpable. He is very culpable in this whole situation. I think we've directed our annoyance and anger towards the Premier League in a respectful way. And I think that, for me, has shown Newcastle United supporters and shown us for what we are. We're loyal fans, but we're very sensible and we're very intelligent fans. And I think as a fan base, it's something which I've said for a long time. And as a former Trust board member and a current Trust member, unity is strength. And it's something that me and many other supporters have pushed for many years. Sometimes we've been laughed at, sometimes we've been told it's a waste of time. But I think what we've seen certainly over the last 7 to 10 days is that what we've been preaching for a while now is very true. And to hear Greg Tomlinson say that the membership of the Trust now is at 14,000, there or thereabouts, I think tells you now that a lot of people are coming around to that way of thinking. And yes, not everyone's going to get on. We're not all going to have the same ideas. That's why there's so many different fans groups out there. We'll never always agree on who should be filling the number 9 shirt either, or who should be in the dugout as head coach or manager. But from our perspective, we can work together when there's a common goal. And this common goal really should be now to help Mike Ashley facilitate the deal of this club by what means we can, and to help PCP, the Rubens, and of course PIF take over Newcastle United Football Club. Keep up the good work. If you haven't joined the Trust, I would advise you to do so. I'm a member, and I know a lot of people obviously tonight watching will be debating whether to become a member. Become a member of the Trust. It doesn't cost you a fortune, and you become part of a huge body which can make a difference. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Okay, I can see Ian Pearson on my screen, so looks like you're unmuted. So away you go, Ian, please, from United with Pride. I can see you waving. I can see you're unmuted. Is your volume turned up? Right. I think we're still having a few issues with Ian here. This is a shame. All right. I'm going to move on, Ian. We haven't forgotten you. We'll try and come back to you. If I say we'll get our technical whiz kids to have a look at this, I'll be lying, because we don't have any. But we'll give it a go. Right, is Mick Martin from True Faith ready to chat to us, please? Mick, are you there? Oh, joyful. Are you here, Mick? Not yet. Right, okay, so I'm going to now move on to our first speaker from the floor. So this is just to say, this is part of what we want to do tonight, is that we do want to hear your voice live and hear what you think about the trust and what's happening at the moment. So please use the chat function to say you'd like to speak, and we'll try our best to get to you. All right, so I'm going to ask Nathan Thomas to speak to the world. Please, third time lucky. Please, third time lucky. Nathan, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, really. Obviously, the trust and yourself, George, has spoken to Amanda and had that kind of dialogue with her, and we've been encouraged as fans to kind of group together and to do what we've done over the past week. I think as a trust member and as a fan, I kind of like to know if also what, or even if you guys know how they're sort of matching what we're doing, because obviously we're putting a lot of sort of time and effort into doing what we're doing to, you know, for the good of the club. But I think it would be nice if there was some sort of transparency, whether they can do or not. Obviously, it's a tentative process that they're going through. But I just wondered if they have like a kind of like end goal to this, and what their plans are, if they've sort of shared any with us at all.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. I think what I'll do is I'll say a few words, and then I might ask Alex to come back on, if that's okay, Alex. Obviously, Alex is muted at the minute, so I'll just say a few words. I mean, we're in a very strange situation. I think we can all acknowledge that, where the bidders have officially pulled out, and yet they, and indeed the club, in the statement that we've seen from the club, are all still committed to it. Now that's a peculiar situation. And when I spoke to Amanda Staveley for the interview I did when it kind of fell apart, she called on fans. She did call on fans to make presentations to the Premier League, and of course that's happened. From my perspective, the way I look at it is that it's moved to a different sphere. So instead of being done through the Premier League, which had, for reasons which they've spoken about on the record, had kind of ground to a halt, it's now feels like it's become a political bid, and that the pressure is being applied in a political forum. Now, whether at the end of it anything happens in relation to the takeover, I simply don't know, and I couldn't tell you. And again, as a very, very old and cynical Newcastle fan, I've kind of told myself that that's the end of it. But that's just that's how I feel sane, and come out of this feeling at all sane. And I don't think I feel sane at all, but how I come out of it feeling sane. But if others have a different view, I completely accept that. For me, the important thing is that if at the end of this, all that's positive out of it is that the trust has a bigger voice and more members and a loud voice, and has shown all of us just what it can do and what it can be, then I take that as a victory. It's perhaps not the victory that we might have wanted or expected or thought about a few weeks ago, but is a very powerful and positive thing. So again, it's a takeover that is over and is not over. It's a takeover that has been withdrawn and that people are still committed to. That's Newcastle for you, try making some sense out of it. I'm now going to ask Alex to say a few words if you'd like to contribute to Nathan's question.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Great question. From a supporters trust perspective, there is only so much that we can achieve, in even right now. And next week we have a plan for this cross-party letter to go out from Conservatives, from Labour. We have, hopefully, we'll have all 20 of the 29 MPs so far who've pledged their support of Premier League transparency. Both Conservative and Labour MPs have told me they will sign the letter and ask their colleagues to. So in terms of what we can achieve as a trust, I think that getting it to that level and making the country aware really of what's gone on, because outside of Newcastle and the Northeast, yes, it's a story. Newcastle United are always news, but in terms of what the region has potentially lost here, and also the behaviour of the Premier League in terms of the lack of transparency, communication, that needs to be a story, because that's the only way we're going to get answers. There isn't some sort of grand master plan. We often look to members for ideas for what the members want to do. So, for example, Greg spoke before about the NUST Council. You know, Saturday night, 6:59 p.m. before I spoke to Amanda Staveley, there wasn't this, you know, plan that we've enacted in the 6 days since. It's kind of very much take feedback, go from there. You know, we're a member organisation. We have to follow what the members want, regardless of what anyone on the board thought about the takeover. 96.7% of our members backed it. So therefore, the position of the Supporters Trust is to follow the members. So what happens next or beyond this is probably very much up to people like you, Gavin. So yeah, there isn't some grand master plan or strategy. We've done what we can, and I think we've been fairly successful as that as a trust and as a membership. You know, if the worst happens in terms of the takeover and we're back around the table with Lee Charnley whenever we're allowed back into workplaces and stuff like that and back into Newcastle United, then we're going to be stronger for that with 14,000 members as opposed to 10 and counting. So from us, it's continually trying to grow. It's continually trying to make our voice as a support louder, more consistent, and one that's harder to ignore.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, and what I also meant to say at the start, of course, is just to repeat from the comments I made at the start. There is nothing wrong with asking for transparency from football, from the people who run your club or from the people who run leagues. It's time that we were spoken to with a human voice. There's nothing wrong with pressing for communication. At the end of this, if the Premier League feel obliged to say something and it's not what we want to hear, then at least they've spoken and at least we know and at least we understand. At the moment, supporters are the last people to hear anything. They're the last people to find out. And that's why this, in my opinion, is a brilliant cause. Right, Ian Pearson, are you on the line?
Can you hear us, George?
Yes.
Yes, get in. Fantastic. Right. Apologies for not being around earlier. I don't know what happened. Right. So my name's Ian Pierson Brown. I am a volunteer for NUFC. I've got about the longest titles going. I'm chair of United with Pride, the LGBTQ+ inclusive fans group. I'm a United as one ambassador for Newcastle United. I'm also an advocate for the mental health campaign, Be a Game Changer, run by the foundation. I've been in regular contact with club officials throughout this entire process, and I'd just like to say a few words. First of all, United with Pride would like to thank NUST for giving our group a voice on this platform tonight. I'm sad to report that at United with Pride, we were subjected to a significant spike in online homophobic abuse when the news of the takeover first broke in March. We liken it to the rise in hate crime following the EU referendum, when a minority of NUFC fans and other fans of other clubs took the opportunity to bombard our online accounts with suggestions like the halftime entertainment will be our members being stoned or hanged and other such banter. It was all very tasteless and it all needed to be dealt with. It was always going to be an awkward conversation for us if new owners came from a country with a poor record for LGBTQ+ rights. So ourselves and club officials had to spend a significant amount of time preparing for further issues should a takeover occur and the abuse to continue. In the last 4 months, the club, I would say, have been paralysed into a state of inertia, with more than 70% of its staff still on furlough, likely due in part to the fact that we've been on the verge of sale for so long. Unable to plan ahead and on a skeletal workforce. A good example of how we know this is how long it took them to sort out the refunds compared to other clubs. This would be manageable if the Premier League's owners and directors test had lasted the standard 2 to 4 weeks. However, 16 weeks without a decision has added to many stresses and strains for the fans, the volunteers and the staff at NUFC. It comes as a relief to us that club officials are now able to plan with us for future visibility projects again, something we were doing yesterday. We are aware that we are one of many community projects that rely on the support of NUFC and the foundation staff. For example, many of you know that there is a mental health campaign called Be a Game Changer currently running through the foundation. I believe the lengthy process of the owners and directors test by the Premier League and the lack of decision making will have had a significant impact on the mental health of many staff, volunteers and fans at NUFC and the wider community. In a year when there's been a mental health crisis in a region where suicides are disproportionately high. To put an institution that is part of the fabric of North East culture into a state of paralysis for this length of time without any explanation begs the question, why? So yesterday, our committee agreed to write a letter to the Premier League highlighting our concerns as a community voluntary group linked to NUFC. I must emphasise it is not in our interest to comment on who should own NUFC. Regardless of who owns or manages the club, at whatever level of the game we play at, our work is to eradicate homophobia, biphobia and transphobia from the game, and that will continue. However, we feel we have legitimate questions of the Premier League and its processes when it impacts on our ability to deliver our action plan. Therefore, we would encourage supporters from all sections of our fan base to join NUST and back their scrutiny and transparency of the Premier League's role in this process. I'd like to finish by asking everyone who's on this call to be a rainbow ally by challenging homophobia, biphobia and transphobic rhetoric and banter wherever you see it in football. Challenge it, call it out directly and report it to us if you're unsure. Thanks for your time, George, that's great.
Thank you very much indeed, Ian. Well worth the wait. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm going to now ask, I'm going to try for Mick Martin again. Mick Martin from True Faith. Are you on the line, Mick? This is like the Eurovision Song Contest, but without the bad singing. No, we don't have Mick. Are you there, Mick? We do not have Mick. So I'm now going to go across to my friend and colleague, and I hope I will catch him unawares. Mark Douglas, are you, from the Chronicle, are you here, Mark?
I am indeed. Hi, George. How you doing?
Oh, thank goodness. I'm okay. Thank you.
How's it going?
Swimmingly.
So I think it's you know I think this week has been absolutely unprecedented in my time covering Newcastle United. In that I don't think I've ever known a situation where supporters have been as united behind one thing as this. I think what's noticeable is it does feel to me like it's the first time that there has been something actually practical that Newcastle fans can do in the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, we've actually seen, I think this week, something that I don't think has been commented on enough, really, that actually there seems to be a consensus now that Mike actually does want to sell the football club. And I think fans should really pat themselves on the back a little bit for that, because although there's been some people who've maybe criticised and not been sure about the strategy, I think all of the different ways that people have engaged with the idea of trying to get something better for Newcastle United, so whether it's been protest, whether it's been sort of just withdrawing their support, or whether it's been even joining the NUST, I think we've seen now that slow pressure, which you know, I think it hasn't been some big bang where Mike Ashley's necessarily come out and sold the club because of a protest or whatever, but it has been a slow, constructive pressure. And I think why that's relevant to this is that we're now seeing, I think over this last week, a really constructive pressure on the Premier League. And look, not everybody necessarily who's even writing the who's writing the letters, not everybody who's behind this idea that there should be transparency is necessarily behind the idea of Saudi investment in Newcastle United. I think we just heard from the last speaker, you know, that there are things that obviously we have to question, we have to look at. But I think we can all agree that we need some transparency. We need to know what is going on here with the Premier League. I think there's been some really valid questions. And what's been really noticeable, I think that George, you know, myself, you know, we try to lead from the front where we can in terms of writing about Newcastle, because we get the access that obviously gives us a bit more insight. but we've seen some incredible contributions by supporters as well here. And I think what's really noticeable, what makes our job easier, is when you have something like the Trust, and you know, Alex does some fantastic work, but it's not just Alex, it's other supporter groups as well. It makes our job easier because we're not necessarily having to come up with different ways of representing the supporters. We're just listening, writing, you know, telling your story as much as anything. And I think what's really been interesting for me this week is, you know, it's been one of the easier weeks to cover for Newcastle United in many ways, because everything's come to us. You know, the Trust have done some fantastic work, and we've been banging the drum for the Trust for a long time, even when, you know, people were not sure about it. And I think what's really interesting for me is that, you know, that has been organic. There's also been you know, engagement from the groups. I know George has spoken, you know, to the group, you know, more than me, but I'd be looking to kind of have some shared insight now into what they're looking to do as well. And I think this idea of pressure is a really interesting tactic. There's no guarantee that it's going to work, but this whole process, I think, has been so badly mismanaged by the Premier League in terms of just shutting down explanations. It is one thing that I think we can all get behind, this idea that there should be some transparency. And I just don't want to see a statement from the Premier League saying we observed due processes. I want to see them sit down with somebody, you know, preferably from the Trust, actually. You know, it'd be a fantastic story for the Chronicle. I'd love to be the person writing the story. I'm sure George would love to write the story as well, get Richard Masters one-on-one, but I actually think it should be the Trust. I think you should sit down with the Trust, and it should be open, minuted, transparent, and answer the questions of the supporters, not a statement. You know, I know that's been mentioned today. Boris Johnson's talked about statements. It shouldn't be a statement. It should be questions answered by the supporters. If there's nothing there to hide, what would be the problem with that? You know, from the Chronicle's perspective, I just pledge that we will get behind the Trust in their ideas. We will listen to supporters. You know, I know we've run our Big Team survey, and we've got we've asked for people's points to be made to Richard Masters as well. So I think there'll be some pressure applied over the weekend as well. But you know, it's working is my sort of message, and keep it up. It's an easy story for us in the media to tell. Newcastle United fans finally being united behind something, and we can get into the other things later on. But for the short term, we need to see the Premier League actually sit down and have meaningful dialogue with Newcastle United fans.
Great stuff, Mark. Thank you very much. I think I'm pretty sure I've seen Mark say on Twitter that this has been the most difficult story that he's covered, and I would certainly second that. And it hasn't been a fun process, and the reason for that, just to sort of interject briefly, is that you have different parties saying absolutely 100% contradictory things, and at a time when we have very little facts or very little public statements, it's very, very hard to try and draw a path through that. That's not an excuse for inaccuracies, but it's just a bit of context that I wanted to make. So thanks very much, Mark. Appreciate that. And we are going to try again to go to Mick Martin from True Faith. And we think we found him. We think he's unmuted. Mick, are you there? Oh dear, don't think Mick's there. We have found him. We do have him. We know he's here, but I certainly can't hear him. Are you there, Mick? No. Okay, so we're going to go back to the people we've asked to join in the discussion. And next up we have, and I truly apologise if I don't get the pronunciation of your name right, Vaibhav Petalia, is that right? And are you on the line?
Yes, George. Hi.
Hi.
So I am Vaibhav from India. I have been a fan for almost 2 decades. I've never really seen a passionate fan base and united as one in the last 2 decades, right? So there has hardly been in a moment where the entire fan base was so united. But my only question to you guys is it a bit too late? Like, should we have done it a couple of months ago? And have the consortium officially taken out the bid? Do the Premier League not have to do anything about it?
Well, thank you very much, and hello to you in India. That's always pretty humbling and amazing to hear from fans around the world. I mean, I can try and answer that question. I don't know the answer is the absolute truth. We know that the consortium have formally withdrawn their interest. That's what they said in a statement. But we know that they're all still committed to the deal, as are the club. So I can't really add a great deal to that. I don't know if any of our other speakers want to say something. But the point is, I think we've just moved to a different phase of the deal, or the attempted deal. Okay. Does Alex want to say anything about that, or?
Yeah, I think from a supporters trust perspective, and that goes what Mark Douglas was saying there before, I don't think a lot of people on this call are asking for a lot. And Newcastle, we're not certainly from a supporters trust perspective, it's not, we're not demanding they approve anything. We aren't demanding they even change anything yet, because we don't know what they've done and what's happening. But it shouldn't take tens of MPs to get involved, to get an organisation like the Premier League, which George said at the very top of this conversation, relies on us to exist, just to give us some answers. And even if they are going to disappoint us, which I hope they don't, but if they are, as Ian said on the call, this has had a real impact on people's lives, whether they work for the football club or whether they're just an interested observer. This is a big thing, and for them to leave it 17 weeks, I mean, I don't know what decision takes 17 weeks ever in anything, and for them to not call yes or no, it does them damage, it does the Premier League damage, and we've been trying to speak to other supporters trusts across the country, and we're going to try and get their support next week as well, because this isn't just about Newcastle United fans. Newcastle United this week could be Aston Villa or West Ham or Wolves or whoever next season or the season after, and I don't want those people to go through what we've gone through. So we're really hopeful that this transcends football and transcends Newcastle United, because it's about accountability at the highest level, and that's what we don't have at the minute. And I agree there with the statement and the question that this is unacceptable.
Yeah, and I'm just seeing someone on the chat there say that my answer doesn't make any sense, and I'm fully aware of that. And that is one of the problems that we've had over the past few weeks and months, that very little does. They've officially withdrawn, but are still committed. And Amanda Staveley did say in the interview that I did with her, effectively, that if the Premier League give approval, they would come back to the table. So we're in this position where it's if anything, you feel like you have resolution to something, and actually you don't. But we've also seen the power of fans mobilising. We've seen the power of fans asking for something, which is transparency, and that is the point. There's been so much that we haven't known and don't know in this process, and it's about time that changed. All right, so I would next like to ask Graham Lindo to speak. Is Graham there, please?
Yes, I am, George. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, Graham, loud and clear.
Fantastic, mate. I'm obviously an exiled Newcastle United fan living in Whitby, North Yorkshire. Get to every home game with my season ticket with my son. Just a couple of things, really. First of all, I'd like to thank the NUST lads, Alex and Greg, and the rest of them for putting this on with you, George. But more importantly, what they've done for the fans over the last sort of 2-3 months and bringing all this together. We are at a point where we do need some answers. That is 100% what we do need, one way or the other. I am an ally of the rainbow sort of hashtag, and I reiterate what was said about homophobic behaviour. It's not acceptable. But more importantly, my first point is, are we being pawns in this geopolitical war between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. You do sense at times that we are. Is it acceptable to ask Amanda Staveley, PCP, and all the other partners involved in the takeover that if the trust were given some sort of board membership, would that be something that the Premier League would have to look at more in detail? Because we've actually got a fans trust on the board of the takeover. And finally, if the takeover is dead in the water, why haven't we seen no disassociation between all the partners in Companies House? A couple of questions there, but those are the things that I've got in my head that I'd like to see some resolution on if I could. So thanks for letting me ask the question, George.
Brilliant. Thanks, Graham. Alex, do you want to chat about that?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I couldn't comment on what the Premier League would or wouldn't have to do. I mean, there is the very real question right now. I mean, the Premier League seem to, according to the buyers, their issue is wanting to make the Saudi state a director because they want to be more clear on who runs Newcastle United. There's probably questions to be asked now about who runs Newcastle United and its current guys, and whether the influential people at the club are on the board, because there's only Lee Charnley on the board. But maybe that's a different conversation for the Premier League for another time. In terms of the supporters' trust, you know, would we like to have a board position where someone elected from us, the members, could represent us in the running of Newcastle United? Well, that would be a dream come true, of course. I mean, it's just a personal opinion of mine, and it's a supporters' trust directive. We think football clubs should be fan-owned eventually. That doesn't seem realistic anytime soon for Premier League clubs. I think lower down the football pyramid, it's very realistic, and it's happening right now. But you know, George read out Amanda's statement at the start. You know, I've had some correspondence with her by text, and she's very, very positive about the supporters' trust, and I would really like to think that if they were successful with their takeover of the club, that would have a great relationship with them. However that may look like, obviously we would be asking for a lot in terms of expecting a board position. But that's probably something for them to comment on rather than me. From a personal perspective, as long as we had a genuine chance to influence the football club in terms of them taking on board the members, your view on a variety of things, not just what happens on the pitch, I think that will be a huge step forward. And happens, by the way, at several other Premier League clubs right now. There are lots of clubs that have fantastic supporter kind of board relations. You know, Tottenham are a great example. Liverpool are another good one. Aston Villa too. So it can happen. It's a shame it doesn't happen now at Newcastle United. And I've spent the last 18 months trying to make it happen with some progress, not as much as I'd have liked. But you know, it's a great point, and let's see what the future holds.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Graham. I think we're going to go to Christopher Argyris next. I hope I pronounced that right. I have a feeling I almost certainly haven't, but I can see you there, Christopher, and unmuted, so away you go.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you, Alex, to the Trust. Thank you for hosting. I would just like to say that we've heard a lot about Newcastle fans being demanding, Newcastle fans demanding Champions League, Newcastle fans demanding that, you know, human rights and other things be set aside. And, you know, I spoke at the earlier thing back 3 months ago, not expecting to be here again now, but I would just say, I think that the Premier League up until this point would not comment, because while we say there's been a formal withdrawal of the parties, perhaps they haven't filed anything to the Premier League, and so the Premier League stance would be, we don't comment on you know, on an ongoing situation, and everything is confidential between the parties. I do believe that the pressure from the MPs and from the fans will put some pressure on an idea that we do need clarification from Masters or someone at the Premier League, to not to say necessarily what the problems are, because that's again with the parties, but to at least say we're still in an ongoing takeover situation, but we're just waiting for more communication from the prospective buyers. because I don't know that we've had any formal notice. If it was over, perhaps the Premier League would either say it's concluded, we have no further remarks, or there would be some breaking of the NDAs. I believe that's why we have gotten some statements or movement from the parties so they can kind of come out of the NDA process, state their claims about frustrations, put some outside pressure, and then ask for pressure from the fans. But speaking of someone who's obviously not from Newcastle, I firmly believe that this is, again, not just about the takeover of a football club, but it's really about the neglect and transformation of a region. I've always enjoyed coming up to the Northeast. I do understand it's a severe deprivation compared to some other. I live in London, and I respect that a lot of times the Northeast feels that London is not listening or doesn't have a voice for Newcastle. I do believe that the fans here have a voice. It's been incredible to have 100,000 people in Northeast celebrities to sign the petition and to push it out. And I do believe that as far as what we can do, keep on doing what we're doing. There's obviously going to have to be some concessions. We're going to have to hear from the Saudis that they've unblocked BN, and as Master said, let the rights holders exercise their rights. So I do believe, yes, there's things that need to happen outside of our control in Saudi Arabia, and perhaps with the MP's pressure, based on how much dealings the Saudis have in the UK already, that there can be some pressure from the Northeast MPs and other people to put pressure on the Saudis to not going to be able to solve a Qatar dispute overnight, but at least to be able to put BN back on, and then the Premier League should have be able to sort out the issues with who's the owner, who's the director after that. But I think if we sort out the BN issue, then the Premier League should have smooth sailing to put it back on. Thank you. And I just want to say just one last thing. Sorry if people think it's inappropriate, but having spent a lot of time in the Middle East, especially Lebanon, I know there's lots of incredible football supporters, including Newcastle supporters in Lebanon and I just like to say that we're thinking of them. We know we compare our struggles, don't compare to what's going on there, and just to, if you have like to see the same amount of support and cause for a football team for our friends in the Middle East and for Lebanon and for Beirut. So thank you.
Okay, Christopher, thank you very much indeed. Some really great points there, and just one that I'll very quickly address about the Premier League. I think that's the point. I mean, for me, the most ridiculous thing about this situation, or one of the most ridiculous things about the situation, is that it's taken the takeover to fall through in its current guise for anybody to say anything in public, apart from the odd oblique reference from the Premier League, apart from stuff that's being filed at Companies House or whatever. Nobody has said anything. Now, we know that football is a business, and it's it's bound by the same rules as business, but where is the understanding, or where is the recognition that football clubs are community assets, and that football clubs really belong to the people who care about them and love them? And that's for me is the cause that is being fought for here. It's the cause of openness. I'm very proud of the words that Sir Bobby Robson said about what a club is supposed to be, because I helped him write them. And I feel very passionately about those words. And it's about explaining that a club does not exist if there are no people there anymore, because a club is a collection of people. And so there has to be a special dispensation for football clubs. And we have to speak, football has to speak to supporters with openness, with honesty, with clarity, and with transparency. Why not? We're all human beings. Why not? So that, to me, that is what's being fought for in this campaign, and has been done brilliantly. Thanks very much, Christopher. That was a great point. And by the way, you also win Zoom background of the night so far. Tino rising like a salmon. head of football. Right, I think we're going to go to Sean Taylor next, if Sean is there, please.
Hello.
Hi, Sean.
You got me? Yeah?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear.
Good. It was just a couple of points, you know, that I have. Looking at the deal and the reasons for pulling out of the deal, there's a simple fact, and I think you just said it prior to coming on. The same rules apply in business that you know, apply to the Premier League. You can't introduce a mechanism that ultimately restricts fair trade. Now, my only worry is that we haven't really seen any noises coming out of the camp that wants to buy, in terms of what their plans are, or, you know, do they believe that that's, you know, unfair or fair? It's a very, very strange situation, and you know, I'm passionate about Newcastle, but we're becoming pawns ourselves within this. You know, we're doing a lot of the legwork to, you know, to get answers, but there's no push from the other side, apart from Amanda Staveley saying the odd, you know, support us, guys. It's a bit of a difficult situation, because you pointed, you know, before I came on.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, appreciate that. Everything about it is strange, let's be honest. But yeah, certainly take that on board. I think most people involved recognise that this is the most controversial takeover attempt that there's been in the Premier League, for fairly obvious and clear reasons. Okay, I'm going to ask Dom Lyons to make his point next. Are you there, Dom?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Can hear you, Dom. Yeah, nice shirt.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I just first of all like to say once again what others have said. Thank you again to the Supporters Trust, because what they've done is, you know, amazing. You know, their voice and ours together is much louder, and we know that. But kind of 2 points really. To go back to the point that you mentioned about the buyers only going back once they've been given approval, but you know, the Premier League can surely just stand there and say nothing. They don't need to. At the moment, as far as we know, there's no bid on the table. So why would they need to come out and, you know, say, yeah, this can go through, essentially? That's the first point. And then I would like to also say, I think Steve Rafe mentioned it on Sky Sports when I saw that earlier, about the possibility of Mike Ashley coming together and the sellers as well as the buyers coming together, because their voice, you know, to the Premier League is a lot louder than ours. You know, we mentioned about tyre kicking. You know, I'll kick as many tyres as I have to, but if I am kicking it and nothing is being done on the fans' perspective for what we're doing to make a difference, then you know, a lot of people are going to give up, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want any of us to give up and it just to be brushed under the carpet, and next season starts and, you know, rinse and repeat for the next summer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Dom. Thank you very much. Tyre kickers has become one of those phrases that's been used a lot at Newcastle over the last decade, and in fact was used about Amanda Staveley first time round. I definitely remember that. In terms of what's going on behind the scenes, we don't know, just as we haven't known throughout a lot of this process. But to repeat what I said earlier, I think it's moved on to a different dimension now. Whether there's any realistic possibility of success in that or not, I don't know. And you know, we'll have to see how it moves forward. But I'll repeat, I think the cause of transparency from the Premier League and asking for answers from the Premier League is a very important one and a very noble one. And again, if the only thing that comes out of this is Newcastle fans speaking with a united voice when it really matters, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. I would now like to ask Keith Allen to make his point, if Keith is there. Are you there, Keith?
I am, guys. Thanks for
There
the opportunity, George. Can you hear us?
Yeah, loud and clear, Keith. Thanks.
You can, yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed tonight. I've enjoyed listening to the questions, the comments, and the talks. And quite astonishing what's been happening over the last week. It's a credit to Newcastle and the supporters, But at first, when after Thursday, I was a little underwhelmed by the ambition of what we were after was merely a statement, transparency. And to be perfectly honest, we've had a little transparency from Amanda Stapley, which is shared with you, George. And what she did share was quite concerning, where she was alluding to some sort of malpractice, some kind of exclusion, interference from member clubs of the Premier League to thwart the deal, to in fact reject the deal. And the Newcastle City Council, the chief exec, has gone one stage further and asked, to have the buyers invited back and a compromise solution sought. I wouldn't inviting the PL to give a statement could be quite self-evident and just say, well, listen, negotiations were ongoing, the buyer withdrew, so we now consider this to be closed case. Now there we've had what answer. Regarding transparency, they can't give a blow-by-blow account of how the logistics, the transaction has gone on over the last 17 weeks. I would imagine for legal reasons, in the fact that quite likely it's a confidential process. So I would have hoped that the first stage of our strategy is to get a statement, is to get some clarity, is to get whatever transparency is legal. But then I would have thought we would have then a second stage to the strategy, which is the campaign to have the buyers invited back to seek a compromise. Because I doubt if there is malpractice, if there is some form of behind the scenes cartel operating within the Premier League, they're hardly going to make that admission in a statement, and they're going to do the best to hide it. Because if there is, I don't want to exaggerate and give false allegations, but if there is some form of malpractice, it's quite a serious issue, which goes deeper than the Newcastle case. So just interested in your comments on what I've said.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think I'm going to ask Greg from the Trust to make a few general points about that. Greg, are you there?
Thank you, George. I think one of the interesting things about what I've seen and what we've seen over the last week, really, in terms of the cross-party call for support on clarity, and it's been important, as Alex said at the beginning, that our ask here is for transparency and clarity. And we did say in that statement, the Premier League might have very good reasons why they need to reject this takeover. And if they should come out and say them, and they should make that very, very clear. But if I was sat at the Premier League right now in Richard Masters' shoes, I would be very, very worried. And I would be very, very worried about what's coming down the line in terms of much needed football governance for football as a whole. And exactly what we've heard from various people around the need for supporters, and George referenced that wonderful Bobby Robson quote that he helped write about, what is a club? And I think, fundamentally, long beyond this takeover, actually, the pressure is going to come down from our elected representatives and from government and from fans and from other clubs and other organisations for fundamental root and branch reform of how football is run in the UK. And I'd be very worried if I was in the Premier League right now on that point.
I think there's a point to be made about what we've seen in football in the Premier League over the last few months as well. Because of lockdown, we've seen football come back without fans, and for me it's been incredibly difficult to watch. It's been very difficult for me to engage with, and it's reminded me, if I needed that reminder, and I didn't, because the stuff I love about football is the mess and the noise and the daft stuff, that fans are not just part of football, they're the essence of football. And so again, if if what's happened over the last few months in terms of lockdown proves that, certainly what's happened over the last few months in terms of Newcastle show that. They show that to me absolutely loud and clear, that we have to start speaking to football fans with a human voice and a real voice. There is nothing to be scared of. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I don't understand why Newcastle, I think Newcastle are probably the worst culprits in the Premier League, can't speak to their own supporters with the voice of just a human being, with empathy and with sympathy and with understanding. That's what I want. There may very well be perfectly good legal reasons at the moment why the Premier League can't say anything. But because this is a process that football has allowed to develop and be put into place, that's what we have to live with. And it's not good enough. And we don't have to. And so we can push to change. And Newcastle fans have done that absolutely brilliantly this week. I think we're going to go to I've lost my place. Are we going to Jim Greenstead next?
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Hi, Jim. Yes, we can.
Hi, thanks very much. Just wanted to say thank you, George, for your reporting throughout this whole thing, and thank you very much to the Supporters Trust as well. You've done absolutely amazing things. It's less of a question, more of a comment, I suppose. Would like to get your thoughts. Just so if I suppose the end game here is that we're all hoping that the Premier League come out and make a comment. And that will be as to why the takeover wasn't approved or declined. So I suppose, is the end game here that the Premier League come out and say this is why the deal wasn't approved, and then we can have Amanda Staveley, the Reuben brothers, the investment fund, whoever, come out and say actually that's false, or that's not true, or so what's the next steps here? What are we looking for from the Premier League? Because they can't come out surely and just say, again, this is a confidential process. I just, they have to give reasons. It's now gone through all these incredible MPs who've written letters to them and stuff. So there will be some sort of comment, you'd assume. So what happens there? Is it then a fight in the public domain, or I'd just like to sort of get your opinion on that, what the next steps are. Thank you very much, by the way, for letting me ask a question.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much, and thank you for the very kind words. Greatly appreciated. It's a great question. I'm gonna see if Alex would like to say a few words about that.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It is a really interesting question. In terms of if we were to get what we want and some transparency and some answers, what that means and what happens after that. I think from the buyer's point of view, and certainly when I spoke to Amanda Staveley, there is a lack of understanding on their side about this as well. It's not like there are hidden answers out there that the buyers or Mike Ashley have got that we don't. They don't understand why a lot of these things have happened. The breakdown or the supposed breakdown that came out last Thursday was the requirement that the Saudi state become a director of the club, because the Premier League say that they're not sure who would actually own the club. Now, if this process has been going on 17 weeks, one of the good answers to get from the Premier League is why now? Why has that come now? Why wasn't that asked at the start? I think I'm pleased you said the term confidential process there, because both Mike Ashley and the buyers have basically blown that out of the water with their comments. The only person this is confidential to now is the Premier League. That has gone, that confidentiality. The Premier League want a real opportunity here to come out and give some answers, and even if it's bad news, to let us all move on from this. I think a lot of accusations and fans would quite naturally think, why not just fail it? If they're not suitable owners, fair enough. I want, and I mean this passionately, I want the Premier League to have stringent tests to protect our football clubs. That is the correct course to follow, and they should be applauded for that. You've seen, most of you will have heard about Wigan in the Football League and what's happened there. I'm not going to say too much on that because it's not why we're here, but that is a scandal. And you've seen some of the things at other clubs, even clubs down the A19 potentially not far away in terms of who's bought them and the intentions of these people. So I fully support the Premier League, but even as someone who absolutely supports the Premier League, why not just fail the test? It gives credence to conspiracy theories, the silence. It gives credibility to the idea that some people would say, not me, because I don't know enough about it, they can't fail them because they haven't failed the test. That, you know, they've Amanda Staveley said in her interview with George in his piece in The Athletic the other week that they've done everything asked of them. The buyers have come out, and that's a bold statement to make when you're public people like Amanda Staveley and the Reuben brothers. If you're coming out and saying we have done what was asked of us, and the Public Investment Fund have done what was asked of them on piracy, debate, it's up to the Premier League now to come back and say, well, no, you haven't. That's a lie. That's not true. And that's, you'd think that was a fairly simple and easy process for the Premier League to do, to come out and say, we are failing this consortium. They are not fit and proper to own Newcastle United Football Club. And here are the reasons. And I guarantee you, everyone on the call and every member, if they were to do that and those reasons were sound, that kind of transparency and accountability, it would be very hard for us to argue with that. I don't think that is a lot to ask for in terms of the future of our football club. The fact that the Premier League, I think 17 weeks has been bandied about. It's probably 18 weeks now. After 18 weeks, still doesn't feel able to do that and still hides behind a clearly debunked process of confidentiality. There are so many questions from this and there are so few answers out there that ultimately that's what we're looking for, those answers. I'll say it again, the message of the Supporters Trust is not approve the sale. I would like to see the sale approved with the limited information that I have as a fan right now. There are quite clearly and quite possibly things that aren't in the public domain, but to be blunt about it again, Amanda Staveley picked up the phone to George and then to you, the members of the Supporters Trust. That's quite a willingness and an openness to communicate. Premier League could do the exact same thing. It's like Mark Douglas said earlier on the call. My phone never gets switched off, unfortunately. They could speak to you, the member of the Supporters Trust, anytime they wanted, and we are willing and open to communication and non-judgmental. So one side's doing it. Why won't the other, from a Premier League perspective? And that's all we want.
Yeah, it's a very good point, that, Alex. I mean, the owners and directors test is there for a reason, and we should want that as fans, that test to be as rigorously applied as possible. I mean, that is a good thing. And if the end of that process, an attempt to take over a club, is rejected, then again, surely that's a good thing. I mean, it might not feel good at the time, but if according to those very strict measures, the people who've applied can't pass the test, then that means they shouldn't be the owners of a club. That's not happened here. What's happened here, according to Amanda Staveley, is that they've been asked for something that they feel they can't deliver, but that the Premier League have said to that they won't give them an answer either way. Now, those were her words, that they're a version of her words, that it would just drift on and on forever. And that's what they felt was intolerable. Now, she has said things, some quite incendiary things, and she said them on the record. They're there to be shot at. They're there to be disproved. And it shouldn't be too difficult for the Premier League to do that. And Alex said, if once others have commented publicly, surely the Premier League can. And again, a wider point, a bigger point, it just doesn't have to be this way forever. Or it shouldn't be. Thank you, Jim. Now we'd like to hear from Adam Barrack, if you're there, Adam. Are you there?
So I am. Good evening, and thanks everyone for the support on the campaign. And I know we've been trying to get Mick Martin on tonight. He hasn't appeared, but he's been writing some really good stuff, so thank you for him as well. I know that we've been talking mostly up till now about the process and the transparency or the lack of it, but what I'd like to talk about a little bit is improper decision making by the Premier League regarding whatever level of transparency they might be. 17 weeks they've been talking about the Newcastle takeover, and I think if it had been a Liverpool or a West Ham, it would have been 5 or 6 or 7 weeks. I don't get that the piracy issue is really what's driving this. I think that's an excuse. And I think it's being used because there is a cartel of the favoured few at the Premier League and we're not on the top table, guys. And I keep coming back. And Alex mentioned before that conspiracy theories will live in a vacuum. And what Keith said before about the cartel, I know a lot of us have been talking about it. And I just don't think that the suits in the Premier League should be allowed to effectively make these sorts of decisions for two reasons. One, we're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds of inward investment into the northeast of England. That is not within the remit of the Premier League to say yes or no to. And secondly, we've got the Premier League effectively arbitrating between a trade war between the Qatari state and the Saudi Arabia state through what they're doing here with the Newcastle takeover. And that is not within the remit of a football authority. So we keep coming back to the process and asking for transparency. I think we can ask for transparency as much as we like, but whether we'll get honesty is a different thing. And I just wanted to make that point.
Cool. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that. At the moment, it looks like we've got 7 more speakers booked in, so I'm going to try and get through as many as possible. Do we have Dunil Baines? Do we have Dunil Baines? I hope I pronounced that right. Dunil, are you there?
I'm there. Good evening, George. Can you hear me? Hiya. Yeah, how are you doing? Yeah, just one thing I'd like to ask. Who? Obviously, we've got a board on the Premier League, but who has the final say on the takeover process? As in, yes, it's passed. No, you can't have it. Who ultimately makes that decision?
All right, thank you. Well, I think that's the Premier League. That's the Premier League board would do that. I mean, they lawyers would work through the finer details of the documents, and then it effectively goes to the Premier League board. That's my understanding. Okay, yes, go on.
Yeah, so really, it should the whole process should not be influenced by any other members of the Premier League, for example, other clubs, etc. That shouldn't happen, should it? Really?
So that's a reference to the claim that was made about Amanda Staveley saying that at least a couple of other clubs who were named that have expressed their displeasure or attempted to influence the process. Again, that's another claim which is pretty incendiary, and you would think would demand a response from the Premier League, but as of yet, that hasn't happened. And again, just to reiterate something that I think Alex said, is that in this vacuum, what has happened? Well, what has happened is it's been filled, and it has been filled increasingly with conspiracy theories. It's been filled with speculation, and my industry has played a part in that, and it's gossip and it's hearsay, and that is what happens when you don't have facts and you don't have information and you don't have communication. And so that again is something that doesn't have to be that way, and it's something that can change, I think, fairly easily. Thank you very much, Dunil. Okay, can we have Matt Wright next, please?
Hi everyone. Yeah, thanks again everyone for putting on this forum and kind of giving everyone a voice and kind of discussing it amongst us all. It's really good. So I just wanted to kind of ask a couple of questions. So, has there been any fallout from the AGM on Thursday? Was this issue raised at any point and discussed, obviously, at that AGM? Would the realistic next step come from Mike Ashley going down that legal route and possibly challenging this due to the length of time that this has happened? And do we know if that's something in the pipeline that's coming out?
Yes, Matt. I mean, you're asking kind of very specific takeover related questions there, and I'm afraid I just don't have the answers to those questions. So I'll apologise for you. I don't know to you. I'm not sure if anybody else would want to speak about that. I mean, I think really, I hope that the point of tonight, certainly from my perspective, is to press for answers to questions like that. and is to press for clarity and to press for transparency. And how do we do that? Well, we do that by making as big a noise as possible. And I think that's what's happened this week. I think Alex actually would like to say a word about the AGM.
Yes, Matt, you'd really, really hope, wouldn't you, that one Premier League club made a massive noise at the AGM, and that's Newcastle. We probably should have just filibustered and not let them talk about anything until they approved the sale, but I don't think that happened. It is a good point, though, that this annual general meetings come about for Premier League clubs, and what do we know about it? Very little, apart from the fact that they've not going to have 5 subs next season, which is good for us and our thin squad. But I think it's just another example of lack of transparency, isn't it? Like Premier League's annual general meeting, what happened? we don't know. So it's a good example of what the problem is.
Yeah, good point, Alex. Okay, have we got John Little ready to speak to us? Are you there, John?
I am. Can you hear us?
Yeah, got you, John. Nice shirts.
Thanks very much. Thanks for setting this up, and Alex is doing a great job as chair, so thanks very much, and hopefully you'll be there for a long time. I think we need to be realistic here about the Saudi interest. I think that they've got a bloody nose. I think they've been humiliated and dragged through the mud by the Premier League. I think unless the Premier League go begging cat in hand, they'll not be back. So, George, obviously you speak to Amanda quite often. Is there any chance at all that this could be restructured where it's her and the Rubens only? And if so, why not? Because it's not like they're short of a few quid.
Thank you very much. I mean, so that's the kind of question that I have asked, and John. But the way it's put to me is that they're all committed to this, to this deal. And clearly, it's not as easy as just walking away and coming back and finding 300 million quid and paying it, and that's that. It's taken months and months and months for this deal to be formatted in the way it is. And the Saudis have been on board since, I think it's November. I'm sure somebody can correct me because that's a matter of public record. But this version of Amanda Staveley's deal has been on the cards, or she's been attempting to sort of get it together for at least 14 months since Benitez was still manager, in actual fact. And there's been, various moments during that time when they thought they were going to make a headway. But for them, from their point of view, it's the Saudi interest that's the game changer in terms of the financial backing, and that's obviously very clear. So I've asked that question about the Reuben brothers, who are fabulously wealthy. We know that, but they're committed to this deal. They're committed to the way this deal is formatted. I can't remember what your other question was. I'm sorry. Are you still there? No, you're muted. Sorry. Did I answer that fully? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, the point was that obviously the Saudis are very proud, and I just don't think that they're going to come back unless the Premier League go begging.
So okay, yes, sorry.
What I know that you're saying that it's been structured this way, but surely the Reubens, the way they've talked and the statement that they made, they know the potential of the club, they know the potential of the area. Surely, they want to invest.
Yeah, as I say, the commitment, the very, very strong commitment from everybody that I've spoken to around it is that they're all committed to this consortium, this group, this bid, and the structure of this bid. That's, they have their own reasons for that. I mean, the Reuben brothers might be fabulously wealthy. They might not fancy losing a lot of that wealth by investing in a football club, which quite often happens. And so that's not on the cards at the moment, is what I'm told. And in terms of the Saudi element, yes, I think it's very clear that although all the group agreed about the withdrawal, all the members of the group signed their names to that document, it was very much PIF led. And so the way it's been put to me is that everybody is still committed to it, everybody still wants to do it, but it would take the Premier League effectively giving approval for the Saudis to kind of come back. And so that's why when I say we're in a different phase of the deal, that's what I mean. They're committed to it. They want to do it, but it's going to take movement. Now, at the moment, that feels like movement on behalf of the Premier League. Is that likely? I don't know. I just don't know. Thanks ever so much. That's a great point, and thanks to everybody who's joining in and contributing. Next up, we've got Steve Binks. Are you there, Steve?
Hiya, George. Yeah.
Hi.
So first of all, thanks to everyone for setting this up. I think it's fantastic, as was the previous one of these that we all did. I think what I'd like to talk about is what the future holds, assuming that the Premier League continue their trend of silence, really. So I think as a fan base, we are fantastically united at the moment, and it's great to see. I'm so positive about what we're doing as a fan base at the moment. But I think we need to prepare for the worst, and I think we need a bit of a roadmap of steps on what is next. You know, it's great that the petition's doing so well. It's great that MPs are involved. You know, is the next step trying to get other clubs, fan bases, national fan associations involved, trying to back this, show that it's more of a Newcastle issue. It's actually a non-sexy Premier League club issue. You know, this is a Burnley issue. It's a Leeds United issue. It's you know, all of those things. And I think we should, you know, start to plan out what that roadmap looks like, all the way up to, you know, protests. I know we've had some of our colleagues outside the Premier League this week. You know, we've got to assume that the Premier League are going to continue to treat us with the contempt that they've shown so far. And it would be great to have a plan and to show them that we're serious. You know, this is not going to go away, and engage with us now before it gets worse for anybody. Would be my point, and I would love to engage the fan base on that. And that's all I really wanted to say. But thanks, guys. I think this has been fantastic.
Thank you very much indeed, Steve. And is that a Eurovision Song Contest T-shirt you're wearing? That's the big question we're asking. It is. Great stuff. Nice one, T-shirt of the night. Okay, I'm going to go to Walid Khalid next, please. Are you there, Walid?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. Yes, please. Yes, I am Al Walid from Saudi Arabia, from one of the broadcaster of LW Newcastle show. I'm proudly to say that I'm just become a member in the NUST. My question is, isn't weird the Premier League didn't comment or say anything at all, especially this week? All Saudi leads says or mention something in the social media except the Premier League. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Walid, and thank you for joining. Yeah, well, that's the point of what we're talking about tonight, really. The events of the last week are about asking the Premier League to say something. I don't know if Alex would like to say something about that, but that is the point of this campaign. Are you there, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. And Walid, thanks for joining the trust. Honestly, it every time a new member joins, we get such a buzz off it, and it's so fantastic that we've got members in Saudi Arabia now and across the world. And you've actually seen in this campaign that we've been running that, you know, the effort outside of the Northeast has been massive as well. The Northeast of England, you know, to have, you know, the likes of Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman having to reply to their constituents, not backing the cause, but saying, you know, we understand what is going on, we're aware of it. These are important people. That's what we're trying to do. And I just really want to quickly make a point to Steve before, who asked about, you know, other supporters, organisations and national bodies. Yeah, that is very much the plan. We have to try and convince them. You know, I've reached out to various trusts so far, and we've also spoken to the Football Supporters Association. So we're exploring every aspect of this, and I totally agree with you. I think Amanda said, you know, she named those two clubs in a piece with George, or George's piece with her. He wrote it, not her. That you know, the Manchester City and Manchester United, for example, were absolutely fine with this deal, but other top 6 clubs weren't. I think that's the kind of thing which really gets to fans, and that's the concern, isn't it? And you know, the clubs that you mentioned, I'm sure no sane fan would blame the fans of those clubs or anything like that. It's got nothing to do with them, and I know that accusation concerns fans of those clubs as well, so they share that. We have a lot in common, far more in common with almost every fan of every other Premier League club than we do the people who run the clubs or the Premier League. So we certainly don't want to see any attacks on them or anything like that. But definitely fan unity is important, and if we can work together to try and get the answers, then it's got to be done.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks very much. Right, let me see where we are. Okay, we're going to go to Malcolm Shields next, please. Malcolm, are you there?
Thanks, George. Yeah, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. One, just about the unity, how important it is. I was involved with the trust when it very first set up many years ago, and we were never able, for many reasons, able to pull all the different fans groups together. So this week has just been fantastic, and long may that continue. And I would urge yourself, George, and Mark Douglas, and the other guys, to keep telling the rest of the country how important that is. And every single person who's come on this call, it's massive. That stick together, please. It'll really help massively. Just a couple of quick points, just to back up something John said and Adam said. What you have to remember is what's going on in the background between Saudi and Qatar. I've lived and worked in Saudi. I've lived and worked in Qatar. And there are big issues in the background here that unfortunately have affected us indirectly and have come into this deal. And that will continue for a long while because they've been at battle for a while. But be aware, the Qataris are powerful people that have a lot of influence, and they're having a big influence on this, I can tell you. Greg's point about Greg Masters in the Premier League being afraid is exactly spot on. That's why they haven't spoke this week, because they're scared. They don't know what to say. Every single email communication they've had from other Premier League clubs, from BN Sports, from anybody, will all come out in the open if there's a legal challenge. And they're scared about that. They're worried. These are the things that are affecting why the Premier League haven't said anything in the last week. I think that it looks like the trust have had some good legal advice up to now. I hope that continues, because if a legal challenge can be an avenue that goes down in the future, we need to be able to support whoever does that. And maybe something for the future, if this impasse kind of carries on, there's quite a few people in the chats have mentioned this, very difficult to do, but because we have a bit of unity, maybe some indirect pressure through cancellation of Sky and BT, money talks, and if other people can influence the Premier League one way, I'm certain Sky and BT can influence the other way if they're going to suffer financially. So that's potentially that. But just carry on with the unity, guys. It's so important. All the fans groups, stick with the trust, and let's see where we can go. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Yeah, very interesting points. And there have been, moments over this saga where certainly just, as a journalist, I'm being asked questions about geopolitics, TV piracy, stuff happening in the Middle East. And I felt hopelessly out of my depth, not for the first time in my career, I must point out, but it's been very difficult, and it's been very wearing. Newcastle fans have a chance to control what they can control, and they've done a fantastic job at that this week. Okay, so we have one more speaker from the floor, and that is Danny Rushton. Are you there, Danny? Are you with us, Danny Rushton? Not sure we have Danny. I'm going to ask one more time. Is Danny there?
Yeah, I'm here, George.
Oh, look at that. Great. Go ahead, Danny.
It was basically just to ask the question that someone's already asked. It was about the fans group coming together for obviously other clubs. but that's obviously all to be answered by Greg from the trust. Not Greg, Alex from the trust. But just to further that point, obviously you mentioned the FSA, the Football Supporters Association. Are they not in collusion with NUST, but are they working on some form of solution to try and get other supporters trust involved? Because obviously it's not just Newcastle United that are going to be affected and its fans, it's football as a whole that's going to be affected by it. Because essentially, if they're not going to pass this, well, if they don't want to make a decision regarding this, then it's going to affect other clubs if similar happens to them. So I think it'd be a good idea to try and get other clubs, fans, essentially, well, mainly trust, really, but protest groups to get on board, all singing from the same hymn sheet, and basically apply more pressure. That was basically my point that someone reiterated earlier on as well. So kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but
no, that's a great point. It's a great point, Danny. That's something that I know that Alex will mention now when he starts to wrap up for us. But that is the point. I mean, it might not be very glamorous doing other clubs' work for them or doing the work for other fans, but nobody should have to be in the position that Newcastle fans have been in over the past few months. Anyway, I would like to call on Alex Hurst, again, the chair of the Newcastle United Supporters Trust, to say a few words in closing. Before that, thank you very much. I'll say a couple of words at the end. But yeah, here's Alex.
Thanks, George. And first of all, I have to start by saying thanks to George for spending his Friday night doing this for the Trust. George has been a massive advocate for the Trust since I've known him, really. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that we wouldn't be having this conversation here with our members now without you, George. So thanks very much for everything you do for us, and long may it continue. Yeah, I'm seeing a few people raising actually a round of applause in the chat there, so that's nice. So after that ovation for George, quickly have to thank Chianura and her staff again, who have provided this platform for us. Again, she's made it possible. You know, for an MP, she's obviously the MP for the constituency that St James's Park and Newcastle United reside. I honestly don't think we could have someone do any more than she does for this area and for this football club. And it was no surprise to see her leading the charge last week with calls of transparency. And I'll quickly say thanks to Mary Glindon as well for coming on. We really appreciate you coming on and speaking from the heart like you did to everyone on the call. And you know, you're a credit. I'm a constituent of yours, and you're a credit to North Tyneside, the best of the counties north of the Tyne. And thanks again for your time. Appreciate it. To finish off quickly, then, Greg mentioned earlier the launch of the NUST Council. That's crucial for us. We are desperate to get you involved more in how we run the Trust. It is for you at the end of the day. It's not for me, it's not for Greg, any more than it is for any of you on this call. Whether you're in South Shields or Saudi Arabia, you know, we want to help us run the Trust. That means a lot to us. And, you know, we relaunched the Trust kind of back in January 2019, the day after we beat Man City. Under the previous manager, I'm not allowed to mention his name, apparently. But you know, we pretty much started from a base of 0 members, and to get up to 14,000 in the time we have, that just tells you how much passion there is out there amongst the fan base for you know, representation, and that's what it's all about. We need you moving forward. You know, it's all about you. It's all about you as Newcastle United supporters. So I'd urge you, if you've got a mate or a family member who's not a member of the Trust, ask them what they're playing at. It's only £1 a year. The first thing we did when we came in was reduce it from £10 a year to £1 a year to make it more accessible to more people, and I'm delighted that's happened. The comment there at the end about fan groups coming together this week, and we'll call this meeting that you've all been kind enough to jump on. You know, unite the fans, unite the fan base. That's meant a lot to me as someone who for whatever reason, you know, has experienced what Malcolm talked about earlier, that for too often in the last 13 years, the biggest asset to the people who run the club currently has been the fact that we haven't been united and unified with one voice. And I think it was Steve Wraith said earlier, you know, we don't all have to agree on everything to be part of one organisation that represents us as Newcastle United supporters. And we have tremendous power, we just haven't realised it. And we've started to show that this week in what we're achieving. And the job is far from done. And the story of the trust is far from finished. So thanks everybody for joining. I think you're all a credit to Newcastle United. We appreciate you coming on this call and giving your thoughts and giving your time up. And everyone at the trust is so proud of all of you for joining the cause and trying to help the support and the people who live in this region get some answers. It's a privilege to be the chair of this trust, and you know, we're not done yet.
Lovely, Alex. Thank you very much. I haven't prepared anything to say at the end, but your contributions have been absolutely fantastic. They've been invigorating. They've been intelligent. I would just go back to what I said at the beginning, that a club is a collection of people. A trust is a collection of people. The trust is the club, and the club is the trust. And in many ways, this has been a very, very dispiriting time to be a Newcastle supporter. But the last week has also been very, very life-affirming in other ways. So all I would say at the end is to say thank you again to everybody who's taken part, and thank you to those people who've joined the trust, and thank you to those people who are already members of the trust. Remember what's happened this week. Remember what you've done this week. Newcastle United, the clue is in the name. Thanks very much. Cheers.